Hey guys, Derek here from Guy, a Girl, and a Camper Van. So Paul is away for the night, which means that I've actually got the house to myself. But I'm most likely not going to be spending too much time in the house tonight, because right now we are approaching the peak of the Perseid Meteor Shower, and 2016 is supposed to be one of the best ones yet. So right now I'm about to wait for the sun to go down, and then I'm going to come back out with the camera and I'm going to see if I can try and get a time lapse of the meteor shower itself. So stay tuned and we'll see what we get. So I'm back out in the field, but before I set up the camera, I figured I'd take a moment to explain what the Perseid Meteor Shower is all about, and why this year is supposed to be so special. Out in the solar system, we have a few easily recognizable objects. We've got the sun, the planets, some moons, and a whole bunch of asteroids. Planets and moons are pretty self-explanatory, and asteroids are typically just relatively small chunks of rock, carbon, and metal. They all orbit the sun on predictable paths and rarely get in each other's way. But every once in a while, we get visited by objects from much further away. And they may still be predictable for astronomers, but to lay people like us, they're usually happy little surprises. I'm of course referring to comets. Back in 1992, a comet named Swift-Tuttle passed through the inner solar system as part of its 133-year oblong orbit of the sun. Oblong basically just means that it revolves around the sun in a stretched out oval shape, and it takes about 133 years to make the entire trip. Now, unlike asteroids, comets aren't just chunks of rock and metal. They also contain a massive amount of ice. A great way to think of them is like huge snowballs, but packed with gravel. And so when Swift-Tuttle came close to the sun, it partially melted, and a bunch of the rocks and dust were let go, creating the stereotypical comet trail. Once the comet left the inner solar system, most of the rocks and dust were left behind, and astronomers call them meteoroids. Okay, so now back to the meteor shower. Every August, during its own orbit around the sun, the Earth crosses paths with this trail of meteoroids, and a whole bunch of them smash into our atmosphere at 210,000 kilometers an hour. To put that into perspective, it's nearly 5,000 times faster than the current world record for sprinting. When meteoroids come into contact with our atmosphere, astronomers rename them to the more familiar term, meteors. And because of the immense speed, they experience unimaginable friction as they pass through our air. All that friction produces heat, and the meteors quickly burn up before they ever hit the ground. We often refer to that resulting flash of light as a shooting star. So the Perseid Meteor Shower is a pretty big deal every August, but you may have noticed that people are talking about it a whole lot more this year than usual. And there's a reason for that. As I mentioned, the Swift-Tuttle comet last passed through our inner solar system in 1992. But as I also mentioned, it also does this every 133 years, which means that every 1 1/3 centuries, it leaves a fresh trail of meteoroids just waiting for us to smash into it. Now, larger planets like Jupiter create pretty serious gravitational fields, which slowly influence the position of these meteoroid trails over time. And in 2016, astronomers are predicting that 3 of these trails will be pulled into alignment with Earth's orbit, which means a whole heck of a lot more meteoroids than usual, and therefore a lot more meteors burning up in our atmosphere. On a typical year, people who live in the country far away from city lights can expect to see about 100 meteors per hour during the peak of the Perseid Meteor Shower. But this year, it's estimated that that number could double at 200 meteors per hour, or several per minute. But here's the thing that just blows my mind. One of the meteoroid trails that Jupiter has pulled into our path was laid there when Swift-Tuttle passed through our inner solar system way back in the year 1079, which means that if we're lucky enough to capture any of these meteors on our time lapse tonight, that means we'll be witnessing objects that were first set into motion nearly 1,000 years ago. All right, back to the camera. For this time-lapse, I'm going to be using our GoPro Hero 4 Silver and a tripod. The meteor shower is supposed to be best viewed between midnight and sunrise, so I'll have to make sure that the camera stays perfectly still the entire time. I'll put the exact camera settings in the description below this video, but essentially our time-lapse is going to consist of a 30-second exposure every 30 seconds for the entire night. The long exposures are because stars are relatively dim, and keeping the shutter open longer will allow more light to hit the camera sensor. And I've got the camera plugged into an extension cord because the battery would die long before the sun comes up. So now that we're all set up, I'll see you in the morning. Morning everyone. So I just went and grabbed the camera and it looks like everything worked well. So I'll show you the clip now, but just keep in mind that this is a time lapse, and so even though we were recording for the entire night, it only amounts to about half a minute or so. So you'll have to focus fairly carefully while you watch it because there are a few things that you'll notice moving around on the screen, but they go by pretty quickly. And we'll talk about what those things are after you watch it. So right away you may have noticed that there were a number of things moving around in the sky, and you probably assumed that those were meteors as part of the Perseid Meteor Shower, but unfortunately they probably weren't. It's more likely that they were planes. The reason I say that is because as a time lapse, each frame in that clip, it actually represents about 30 seconds of real time. So anything that takes up more than one frame was moving much slower than the meteors do. That's why I say it's probably planes slowly moving across the sky. You can also notice, if we look at a still, that the lines left by those planes actually show little dots as they move along. That's because the lights in the plane flash, and so during the 30 seconds it flashes, and then flashes, and then flashes, and that frame picks up all of them. If we want to see any of the actual meteors, we have to go through the video clip frame by frame by frame by frame and look for things that only last for one of the frames. Those are much more likely to be the actual meteors. So luckily, I've already done that, and here are a few still images that I was able to find as good examples of some of the meteors that we were able to capture. So the sky was still a little bit hazy last night, and I'm just using a GoPro instead of a more powerful DSLR camera that probably would have been able to pick up a lot more of the light. But this is still pretty cool to be able to see a few of the actual meteors and be able to capture them and share them with all of you. And when you keep in mind that some of these meteors could have been waiting for us to come along for nearly 1,000 years, it's still pretty special just to be able to see any of them at all. So the peak of the Perseid Meteor Shower for this year was on the 11th and 12th of August. So as I am uploading this video, unfortunately, the peak has passed. But the meteor shower itself is expected to continue until about the 24th. So you may not see the absolute peak of it, but there's still an opportunity to get outside and take a look at some of the normal frequency of meteors, which is still about 100 an hour. I really hope you enjoyed this video as much as I enjoyed putting it together. Space has always been one of my biggest interests, and it's a lot of fun to be able to share it with other people. If you did enjoy this and would like to see more videos kind of like this one, then let me know in the comments below. It's a lot of fun to be able to geek out a little bit whenever Paul is away, and being able to share it with all of you, it makes it even more special. But otherwise, we will see you again soon, because we've got lots of garden updates for you and some more fun stuff with the van as well. Talk to you soon.